Hey, shalom everyone, this is Kris Shoemaker, also known as Yehudah ben Shomeyr, and welcome to the Paranormal Ponderings, where we take a look at the paranormal through a Judeo-Christian biblical worldview. Today I want to talk about cryptids and cryptozoology. Now this involves animals that are supposedly either fictitious or mythological or mystical. This includes things like the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, Chupacabra, and other animals such as these. Now, I'm not going to deal with Bigfoot in this episode. We already did a previous episode totally dedicated to Bigfoot, and I would suggest and ask that you go back and review that particular episode. But what are things like Chupacabra? What are things like the Dogmen, the Jersey Devil, werewolves? What are these things, if anything at all? So let's start with the Loch Ness Monster, Nessie. There is a counterpart in Canada called a champ from Lake Champlain. Now, these lakes are very wide, very vast, very deep. The water is very murky, very dark. There's been a lot of research and a lot of scientists who have gone out in these waters with sonar, with recording equipment, with other types of scientific devices to try to pick up this Loch Ness Monster, this Nessie, this champ. And there's been things caught on the video footage that simply can't be explained or passed off as another lake-dwelling fish or animal. There's some mysterious sounds that they can't explain and attribute to any other natural phenomena or natural animal. There is also the theory that a lot of these bigger lakes that are very deep, we haven't even plunged the depths and researched the bottom because some of them are so deep, and that there are interconnected tunnels that Lake Loch Ness leads to other water sources, other lakes, and there's even theories that there are tunnels that lead out to the ocean, etc. So there are so many eyewitness accounts and so many stories and so many reports and so much photographic evidence regarding the Loch Ness Monster that they can't all be explained away as hoaxes or as mistaken identity for another marine animal or for a floating log that or what have you. So there's got to be something to it. And the stories all seem to persist even into the modern day. Now, my personal opinion is that I believe that the Loch Ness Monster and champ are a leftover from the dinosaurs. And a lot of people believe that it is a plesiosaurus or some other marine dinosaur. To me, that's the most logical explanation. The descriptions seem to fit this leftover dinosaur. And a lot of people think, well, aren't dinosaurs extinct? Well, not necessarily. We can't believe the Darwinian supposed scientific narrative that dinosaurs were before human beings because there have actually been fossilized evidence of human footprints right beside dinosaur footprints from the same strata, same era. It can't be explained away, so it's greatly ignored. And people think, well, if there were such a thing as dinosaurs, why don't we have them today? Well, we do. We have their relatives and their descendants, such as the alligator, the alligator, the crocodile, these reptiles, the Komodo dragon, things like this. These are the descendants of the dinosaurs. Now, reptiles are special in the animal world because they never stop growing. And the older they are, the bigger they are. There's some tortoises that are on the planet that are over 100 years old. So reptiles do not stop growing. Sometimes you'll see on the Discovery Channel or the Learning Channel or some documentary regarding, these supersized anacondas or these supersized alligators or crocodiles that they find in the swamps, and they call them, Gatorzilla or something like that because it's just an unusual size. And when they capture these, come to find out that these particular species are very, very old because they're so huge they don't stop growing. And so we have remnants of dinosaurs that have been left over. Now, people say, well, what about, if the whole biblical narrative is true, what about Noah's Ark? He certainly couldn't have taken these dinosaurs on the ark. Well, sure he can. He doesn't have to take full-grown adults. He can take, younger dinosaurs, which don't take up much space, which are smaller. And the climate and the conditions were different in Noah's day. The earth was surrounded, according to the biblical narrative, God separated water from water. And the water below the water in the sky became the seas, and the water above the earth created a hyperbaric chamber. And if you know anything about a hyperbaric chamber, this is often used when people go deep sea diving and come up too quickly, and they have the bends. And so they go in this hyperbaric chamber to decompress and so that they don't get sick and die. Some people with catastrophic injuries to limbs will spend time in a hyperbaric chamber to help aid their healing. There have been plants, such as tomato plants, that have been grown in a hyperbaric chamber, and these tomatoes are almost the size of pumpkins. They grow bigger, they grow taller. So a hyperbaric chamber promotes rapid growth, it promotes larger growth. So these dinosaurs lived in a special hyperbaric chamber type climate before the floods of Noah. So the climate was different and it was more adapted to the dinosaur species. Job talks about Leviathan, which was a sea-dwelling dinosaur. He also talks about Behemoth, which we believe was a Diplodocus, or what some people know as a Brontosaurus. Now, the scholars who think that they're so wise and enlightened, they say, oh, it was a rhinoceros or a hippopotamus or an elephant. But in Job, it talks about Behemoth and says that his tail swings like a cedar. Well, last time I checked, a rhinoceros, a hippopotamus, and a dinosaur, their tails do not swing like cedars. Maybe like a cedar twig, but this would fit the description of a Diplodocus, of a Brontosaurus. So, it talks about how this behemoth was a plant eater, and, that would fit along with that description of the Diplodocus / Brontosaurus. Leviathan was some sort of sea-dwelling dinosaur. And so the book of Job talks about dinosaurs, and the book of Job is the oldest book in the Bible. Genesis was penned many, many years later. But the book of Job describes how things were post-flood, where dinosaurs were still roaming the earth. And because of the change in the atmosphere, because what had happened during Noah's flood, the water in the skies, the hyperbaric chamber that surrounded the earth, burst forth, and that's where all the rain came from. The water from underneath the earth, the earth broke up and released the water from underneath the earth. So that's how the earth was totally flooded, entirely flooded. And because the hyperbaric chamber was lost in the Noahic flood, things don't live as long, things don't grow as large. So it wasn't conducive for dinosaur life. But dinosaurs lived way into even the medieval times. This is where the legends of dragons came from. Dragons were nothing but leftover remnants of the dinosaurs. That's all that they were able to describe them as. And there's a lot of documentation from the Middle Ages and medieval time regarding peasants encountering these strange, tall, lizard-like creatures. One of them even killed one on a road with his walking stick, and it hissed at him. There was also a Japanese fishing boat which dredged up the remains of a plesiosaurus, and it hadn't been dead that long. So there is that possibility that dinosaurs are still roaming the earth, because science tries to make the earth too small by saying, oh, we're overpopulated and we've got to cut down on having babies because there's no more room. Well, guess what? There is still virgin territory within Russia, within the Amazon, within China, within other parts of the world where, the human being has never set foot. It's still virgin territory. There's plenty of room on this earth. So there's plenty of places for these dinosaurs, these remnants of the dinosaurs to hide. And they're not going to be big and tall like we see on Jurassic Park because of the loss of the hyperbaric chamber. They're not going to grow as big and not going to grow as large. They probably don't live as long because they don't have the resources to live off of. Now, this could also explain the thunderbirds. They could be, something like a pterodactyl. That a lot of people will claim to see thunderbirds in the desert and in Utah and in New Mexico and in places like this, Arizona. And there's legends of the thunderbird, and it would fit, because there's this oversized bird, that it would probably fit best with a pterodon or a pterodactyl. There have also been stories from loggers in the Amazon that have run into what they claim are dinosaurs or dinosaur-like creatures when they're cutting down the forest. And so, there's a still possibility that a lot of the cryptids and that are in cryptozoology could be attributed to the remnants or the leftovers of the dinosaur. Now, just because it's on the list of extinct species doesn't mean that they're extinct. Just recently, there was this big cat, and I can't remember the name of the cat, but it was supposedly had been extinct for over 30 years, and it has just recently been photographed once again to prove that it exists. So just because it's deemed by mankind extinct, don't give up hope. Because we can't track or see everything. Like I said, there's still virgin territory on this planet. So therefore, there's a lot of places for these dinosaurs or these supposed extinct mammal life to hide and to breed and to thrive. Life always finds a way, as it was said on Jurassic Park. So there's been a couple of animal species that have actually been taken off the extinct species list and put on the endangered species list because they've popped up again. They showed up again. Big cats and canines and as far as like animal species go, they're discovering new insect species almost daily as they go through the different jungles and different places in the world. You have a place that's Mariana's Trench that's so deep that a human being can't go there unaided, or they would be crushed like an aluminum can. And there are animals dwelling down there, and some of them next to volcanic thermal vents, and it can only survive in that environment. That we just have never seen or don't know much about because we just can't get there to photograph them and to study them. It was once thought that the giant squid was a myth, a sailor's tale. But yet, because of technology, we're able to take cameras down there, and we've actually not only photographed, but actually brought up a giant squid. So a lot of these legends of these sea monsters, the Kraken and things of this nature, breaking apart ships, it could very well have been true. It could have been like a giant squid and not just a thing of myth. Because myths always springboard off of a grain of truth, and they end up becoming embellished through the years to a mythical, unbelievable status. But a lot of times, if we can dig past that and get down to the root of the myth, we'll find that there's a grain of truth to it. So the Kraken and other sea monsters such as this was probably giant squids and things of this nature. So there are room for the possibility of cryptids and cryptozoology. So we've covered Nessie, we've covered dinosaurs, and again, people say, well, what about Noah's Ark? If that's true, what about Noah's Ark? Like I said, reptiles, dinosaurs were reptiles and amphibious. They never stopped growing throughout their life. So Noah could have easily taken, young babies on the ark. They wouldn't have taken up that much space or that much room. So there you go. And like I said earlier, there has been geological evidence of fossils found of human footprints and dinosaur tracks side by side each other, same time era, and it just can't be explained. So the Darwinian narrative is a straw man theory. It just does not hold water when put up against hard science. The hard science they want to deny and sweep under the rug to discredit the biblical narrative. Now, what about werewolves What about dogmen? What about the Jersey Devil? What about Chupacabra? Well, these, I think, are another class of cryptids altogether. That they are like Bigfoot. They straddle the physical and spiritual realm. In short, I used to think Bigfoot was a North American primate, but with all of the legends that go along with it and the mysticism that goes along with Bigfoot, how he can appear and disappear at will, how sometimes Bigfoot is often seen in conjunction with a UFO sighting, things like this. I believe that it's spiritual, and especially the Native American lore saying that these creatures are intelligent, they're godlike, they have supernatural powers. I believe that they're Nephilim, that they're a form of Nephilim. And again, I won't go into any more detail. Just go back to the Bigfoot episode, and you can kind of bone up on that information. But in Judaism, there is a thing called a daibuk. Now, a daibuk is a very special class of demon. Essentially, a daibuk is a demon that is created by man's will. And, a lot of times demons are attributed to fallen angels. Demons have also been attributed to the disembodied spirits of pre-Adamic beings. There is a theory that there was an earth before this one, and it was flooded too, because in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Stop. Okay, so the earth was created. Then it says the earth was without form and void. Tohu bohu, destruction and obliteration, and water covered the face of the deep. So it indicates that the first world, the pre-Adamic earth, was judged, because God creates things good. He creates things whole. He doesn't create things in a destructive, chaotic state. So it is theorized and is backed up through different prophecies and different prophetic writings, such as Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, that there was a pre-Adamic earth. And if there was a pre-Adamic earth and there was pre-Adamic beings, that the disembodied spirits of these pre-Adamic beings are also attributed to demonic activity, because they no longer have a body, therefore they can no longer enjoy the carnal pleasures of sin. So that's why they're so desperate to possess other people, so that they can feel these carnal sins that they want to participate in, which is rape, murder, what have you, right? So that's a different class of beings: fallen angels, pre-Adamic, disembodied spirits. And then you have the daibuk, which is created. It's like, if you watch Ghost Hunters, they have a different theory of what poltergeists are. They believe that poltergeists are psychic phenomena, activity given off by human beings, that they're causing this stuff to happen. And we know very little about the human brain and about the human psyche. So there is a possibility that we are not using the full potential of our brain and what we can do. So a lot of people believe that we do have natural, psychic, telekinetic type abilities, but we don't know how to use them. We don't know how to tap into them. We don't know how to control them. And so when anybody is anxious or frightened, or going through an emotional crisis, sometimes it's even linked to women's menstrual cycles, that we can affect the environment around us, and it may look like a haunting, and it may look like a poltergeist or a demonic spirit. So with that being said, kind of along the same lines and the same principle, a story can be told so much, and a person's imagination and energy can be given into that lore, such as the Jersey Devil or the Mothman, and it can manifest spiritually. So it's almost like a collective psychic consciousness creates this mythos and gives life to it. So what we're actually seeing in regards to, the Mothman or the Jersey Devil or, the Dogmen or other creatures like this, it could be a manifestation of a daibuk, which is the collective consciousness of individuals giving life to this story, and it taking on a manifest presence that leaves evidence behind. So I believe that these things are spiritual in nature, and they're not good. That they're not good. They're evil. they're like I said, in Judaism we call them a daibuk. This would also kind of be like a monkey on somebody's back, where we have an addiction, and we give in so much to that addiction that addiction takes on a spiritual essence of its own that controls us, that enslaves us, that torments us. And this could maybe even explain also, people that are schizophrenic and hear voices. They may be hearing voices that they have created themselves by giving life to a sin or life to an addiction and giving it a manifest presence. And again, this is called daibuk. So this could possibly be what a lot of these myths, such as Mothman and the Jersey Devil, are. Again, they're rooted in a truth. They're rooted in a story. So there's a grain of truth to it, but something spiritual occurred that made it manifest. It could come from another dimension or another realm. We know that the angelic host and the demonic host, they are in another dimension. And if you have listened to my episode on aliens and UFOs, you will know that I believe that they are not extraterrestrial, but extra-dimensional, that they fit more the profile of a demon than they fit of an alien extraterrestrial presence from another star system. And so the same kind of thing could be with Mothman, with the Jersey Devil. They actually could be demonic entities from the angelic demonic dimension or realm. And they could be conjured here or called here through, if you will, portals or stargates that are opened up through satanic and or pagan rituals. And they're brought from that dimension into this dimension, and they can slip in and out at will. That's why we've never been able to catch a Bigfoot. That's why we've never been able to catch the Jersey Devil, and then that's why it's been able to live so long. And that's why we've never been able to catch the Mothman, but yet we can still capture what we believe is photographic evidence or even audio evidence of this. But there's been tracks of supposed Bigfoot, supposed Jersey Devil or Mothman or chupacabras, and all of a sudden the tracks end as if it just disappears. I say they slip into another realm or another dimension. Now, this also could explain the manifestations of other mythological things such as fairies, such as trolls, such as leprechauns, because people are starting to see these things now and to report sightings of these things. And supposedly there's a story. L.A. Marzulli talks about this. I think he's producing a video series on the Trail of the Nephilim, or maybe it's called the Legends series, where supposedly there has been some remains of what they believe might be a fairy. And it almost looks like the fairies that are portrayed on one of the Hellboy movies. And so they've x-rayed it, they've taken samples from it. So if this is the real deal and not some sort of hoax, I mean, we could attribute this to the spirit realm. Because again, the spirit realm can take on a physical manifest presence. This is the whole thing regarding Genesis chapter 6, where the sons of God, the fallen angelic race, came down to earth, took on a physical manifest presence, cohabitated with human women, and created these hybrids, these Nephilim, these giants. And it talks about the giants being pre-flood and post-flood. And one of the most earliest accounts of giants would be just go to lamarzulli.com or .net. You could just Google it or DuckDuckGo it, and you can find him pretty easy. He has a whole episode on the Kandahar giant back in the early 2000s. U.S. military forces in operation in Afghanistan ran into this fiery, red-headed, like 15-foot giant that had ancient armor, and it actually used its pike to kill one of the guys in the unit, skewed him, and the bullets really had little effect, and then they said, let's shoot for the face, and so they just started focusing their fire on his head, finally took down this giant. And of course the military came in with a cargo net, whisked it away, and nobody's ever heard it. But a lot of these guys that were actually on that patrol have come out They've disguised their name, their identities, their voices, and given accounts to what happened. So just look up the Kandahar giant. So this will talk about the Nephilim. Also, look up the conspiracy regarding the Smithsonian Institute and giants, or the Newark, Ohio mounds and giants. And there's a whole conspiracy about giant skeletal remains being found and whisked away and hidden by the scientific community. People say, well, why would they do that? Again, to discredit the biblical narrative. If it's brought out to the world that there's giant skeletal remains that have 6 fingers and 2 rows of teeth that have been found and that are everywhere, then it would prove the biblical narrative of Genesis 6 true, and it would discredit the Darwinian theory. So that's the whole reason and purpose behind it. So I would also lump in chupacabra. There's several different versions of chupacabra that are going around. Some of them are lizard-like, some of them are dog-like. Some people say that they're a mutation or some sort of governmental or army experiment gone wrong. But with the goat suckers is what chupacabra means. With these, the descriptions and the eyewitness accounts and stories connected, it would be more of a spiritual entity that is manifest physically than anything else. It would kind of fall into the realm of the Mothman and the Jersey Devil and werewolves and things of this nature. There's also, kind of going back really quick to the whole Dybbuk, the whole lore of Slenderman or Slenderman, that was birthed on the internet. That is a recent folklore. But yet, people have encountered this Slender Man, even though it was made up, even though it was a story that's just been circulated on the internet. It's not one of these legends that go back hundreds of years. It's like in our time, in our century. But it has been watched and retold and talked about so much that it is actually manifest and have become real, a life of its own, and it would be classified, in my opinion, as a Dybbuk. Now, we'll just go ahead and not only talk about cryptids and cryptozoology, but also mythology. You have the centaur, the half man, half horse. You have the minotaur, half man, half bull. You have Pan, which is half goat, half man. These are all of Greek mythology, and it could even be traced back further to Babylon and Egypt. And in Egypt, you had men with bird heads or men with dog heads. Well, if you read Genesis 6 and also read some extra biblical literature, such as the books of Enoch, the book of Jasher, and the book of Jubilees, it talks about these fallen angels who cohabitated with human women, creating these Nephilim, creating these giants, these angelic human hybrids, that they also did experiments upon other animals. Blending creature with creature. This would also explain the Sphinx, which is a lion with the face of a pharaoh or face of a man. You even have the biblical account of the lion men of Gad, the Gadite men who looked like lions. So these fallen angels, according to the scripture, it says all flesh corrupted itself, not just these angelic human hybrids called the Nephilim, but all flesh. So these angels were teaching men how to interbreed different species. And of course, these fallen angels have been around since the beginning of time, so they would know about DNA and genetics and things that we as human beings are just starting to learn about and starting to experiment with. So it's believed that these, through either secret arts or through advanced scientific method, that they taught human beings of the pre-flood world and post-flood world how to mix species and mingle species. Therefore, you have these half men, half horses. Because again, yes, people say, oh, this is just stories, this is just mythology. But myths always have some grain of truth to them. They have to start and be a springboard of truth somewhere. So if this is the case, this biblical and apocryphal narrative of the fallen angels giving this forbidden knowledge to mankind and interbreeding different animal species together. This is where, Pegasus and griffins would come from, as well as the Minotaur, Centaur, Pan, things like this. And because these fallen angels wanted to number one, to corrupt God's created order, to pollute God's created order, in the name of we're going to make it bigger and better and improve it. Secondly, they wanted to create something and pervert it into their own fallen image. Because a lot of these Canaanite gods were chimera type creatures. You had Dagon, which was like a merman. He was half fish, half man. And you had these other Canaanite gods like Baal or Molech. They were half bull, half man. And in Greek mythology, you had the Centaur and the Minotaur and these things like that. So this would lend credence to the apocryphal and biblical narrative more so than, the ancients just pulled these stories out of their butt just to make up their own mythos. No, it came from somewhere. It just wasn't made up as a good fireside story. They had the root of truth in it somewhere, and it has been elaborated and embellished and drawn out over the years and over the centuries. So I think that through a Judeo-Christian worldview, we can satisfactorily come to a biblical conclusion on what cryptids are, what cryptozoology is, what mythological creatures are or were, and this kind of helps explain it. Again, I'm no expert. I'm just a novice at this. I'm an enthusiast at this. But hopefully I've given you enough biblical truth to whet your appetite or give you a satisfactory answer or to push you to further research. And again, I urge you to look up L.A. Marzulli, Skywatch TV, Gary Stearman and Prophecy Watchers, and other guys like that. The Fall Brothers, they all kind of touch on these subjects and tackle these paranormal and mythological subjects through a Judeo-Christian worldview and can explain it way better than I can. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for listening. Go out there and have a great day. God bless. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to press the like button as well as the subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and the notification bell that'll let you know every time I make a new video. And don't forget to share this with a friend. Also, visit our website at abrahamsdescendants.com. Thanks. Shalom. abrahamsdescendants.com. Getting back to the 1st century in a 21st century way. Thanks for watching. Stay connected by subscribing to our other social media accounts and visiting our website at abrahamsdescendants.com.